My name is Julia Streets. It's a great pleasure to be the host today because it's wonderful for me. I get invited to host these conferences all around the world. And today, of course, digitally is no exception at all. I'm a female founder myself, 30 years in financial services, very passionate about diversity and inclusion with a podcast called Diverse City Podcast. And also I'm a stand-up comedian, so I get invited to host many events to drive, hopefully, some life and some energy into the top and the tail of these sessions. But also, I have to say, I'm really looking forward to today because we have an incredible executive panel. But before we get into that, let me introduce our first speaker, our opening speaker. She's known to many of you for sure, and right now she's removing her mute. She's activating her camera. And ladies and gentlemen, you are most welcome to all Women in Payments events. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the founder and the CEO of Women in Payments, Christy Duncan. Christy, there you are. Hi, how are you?
Thank you so much for that fabulous introduction, Julia. It is my pleasure to be here with the fab Women in Payments in the UK and beyond. As Julia mentioned, this is day 2 of our live webinar series this year, and I'm very excited to have these 2 awesome items on our agenda: the executive panel discussion, which is always a highlight of our events, and the second half of this year's award presentations. It has been my pleasure and privilege to continue working with women in our industry to connect, inspire, and champion you, the women across the global payments ecosystem. I've been so tremendously inspired by the way women are stepping up to this.
Christy, can I just interrupt 2 seconds? Your line's got a little chewy, has to be said. I wonder if I could just repeat what you were just saying there and hoping that your lines settle down a little bit. I think if I understood you correctly, you were saying that impressed by how women have really stepped up to the mark, particularly with home working and thinking about the multiple roles that they're taking in life as well. Why don't you come back in with your opening remarks, and hopefully the line would have settled a little.
Thanks, Julia. It's been my pleasure and privilege to continue working to connect, inspire, and champion you, the incredibly resilient women in payments in the UK and across the global payments ecosystem. I've been tremendously inspired by the way women are so resilient in taking on multiple roles. And we are experts at multitasking, and I do hope we'll soon find a way to normal with less pressure and angst. Women in Payments has been doing a pivot of our own over the last couple of months, and we're pleased to introduce 3 new ways to support our community. Soon to be weekly Palm Cafe, a virtual drop-in coffee hour that is open to all, and we get people from all around the world dropping in, which is really fun. We're also doing weekly webinars, the Pause for Payments with Christy, where we chat with a wide range of amazing women payments innovators, experts, and leaders from around the world to hear what's happening in the industry and to get their career tips. Plus, we continue to build out our global mentorship program as we launch a weekly Mentor Talks, virtual mentoring, group mentoring, and a little bit of networking event. All of these to our amazingly supportive sponsors.
Yeah, the line went through there, but I just want to be sure that everybody does hear that point about it is the pom.womeninpayments.org, which is for the premium members. It's the jobs board as well. So I know you're a big fan of that. Again, hopefully the line is now settled, and I know you're very keen to thank our sponsors as well. So let me come back to you right there.
Thanks, Julia. We've got the most amazing sponsors this year. We've got global sponsors that include JP Morgan at the silver level. Our global bronze sponsors include ACI Worldwide, Ingenico, PayPal, and Visa. And our UK sponsors this year include American Express, our award sponsor. Finastra is our gold sponsor this year. Elevon has sponsored our Unicorn Challenge. And Ripple is a bronze sponsor in the UK this year. Let's give them a big hand to show our appreciation. I'm now handing over to Preeti Saini of Finastra to kick off the executive panel discussion.
Thanks, Christy, and hello, everybody. I have the pleasure of introducing the Women in Payments executive panel today. And we're going to learn a little bit more about their journey into payments, their insights, and also some pearls of wisdom. So moderating the panel today is Liz Lumley. Liz has spent over 20 years working in the financial services, financial technology space, most recently as Managing Director at Startup Bootcamp FinTech London, and as an editor at Financial Services and Technology Newswire FinExtra. She's currently Director of FinTech at VC Innovations, a London-based disruptive community, content and experience builder for innovation. On the panel, we have Sara Castelhano, Managing Director and Head of Core Cash Product Management at JP Morgan. Here, she is leading the Europe, Middle East and Africa expansion strategy for JP Morgan and is also accountable for the provision of payment products across 13 countries in the region. She is recognized as a thought leader in transaction banking and has featured in various industry publications, including The Banker magazine. Our second panel member is Natasha de Teran, a non-resident scholar at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and a member of Carnegie's FinCyber advisory group. Natasha was the former head of corporate affairs at Swift, where she led Swift's global communication, government affairs, public policy, and regulation functions. She joined Swift from LCH ClearNet, where she served as head of public affairs, prior to which she worked as a journalist with regular features in The Banker, The Wall Street Journal, The Financial Times, to name just a few. She's also on the European Commission's Payment Systems Market Expert Group and served 2 terms on the European Securities and Markets Authority Post-Trade Standard Committee, Standing Committee. Joining Sara and Natasha is Ruth Wandhöfer of Gauss Ventures. Now, Dr. Ruth is one of the foremost authorities in transaction banking, regulatory, and innovation in financial technology matters. After spending a little over a decade with Citi, Ruth is now a non-executive director on boards of the London Stock Exchange Group, TSB, and Pendo Systems. Ruth was named as one of 2010's Rising Stars by Financial News. She was named in Management Today's 2011 35 Women Under 35 list of women to watch and identified as one of the 100 most influential people in Finance 2012 by the Treasury Risk magazine. She received the Women in Banking and Finance Award for Achievement and was named on the Global Women in FinTech Power List of Innovate Finance. Our final panel member is Sara Webb, President of UK and Europe at OFX. Sara has over 20 years experience in payments. In her role at OFX, she is responsible for all regional commercial growth whilst leading the expansion strategy across Europe. Prior to OFX, Sara was Managing Director of Global Payments Networks at Barclays and the Account Executive Lead on the Barclaycard PSD2 program. Before joining Barclays, Sara was Head of Global Product Management Commercial Payments at American Express. It's a fantastic panel with so much experience. So please do join me in welcoming our panel and your moderator, Liz Lumley.
Wonderful. Thank you, Preeti. Thank you so much for that introduction. That was really helpful and lovely. Are we on? We're on now? We're cool? Yep. Hey, there we are. There's our panel. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I know that this is the Women in Payments executive panel, but I like to think of it as the Women in Payments Superstar panel. So I'm hoping that everyone in the audience will get a lot of inspiration, advice, and insights from all of these really accomplished women that you're going to hear from today. So since Preeti gave us a wonderful introduction, I'm going to start in on all of my questions. And I really want to ask the women on the panel to find out more about you as people. You know, how did you all end up as squares on our Zoom webinar on this panel? I really want you to sort of blow your own trumpets and tell us about your career journey. So I'm going to start off with that question, and everyone's going to get a chance to answer. I'm going to start off with Sara, if she can start.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for this opportunity. JP Morgan just became a global sponsor of Women in Payments, and we're very excited to be part of the organization. And that's one of the biggest reasons I'm here. I fully support diversity and inclusion across JP Morgan. And now we're really looking at how do we support the wider payments community. So
very, very on trend, very, very good Zoom background there. Very, you know, on the brand. So
exactly. Although I'm located in my house, I do have a nice background. It was Postman Pat earlier this month, so I'm trying to keep it relevant. But yes, absolutely. Thank you. So I've been in the payments industry for over 10 years, and I've worked at JP Morgan, really helping us build out our product offering that we have in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We are the largest US dollar clearer. $1 in $5 is processed across JP Morgan. But what we've really been focusing the last couple of years is building out our franchise in EMEA. So not only are we building out the talent, but the product capabilities and just that whole end-to-end customer experience. So I have a very diverse team that sits across 13 countries. And I think that really promoting not only diversity, but diversity and inclusion is extremely important. So I'm thrilled to be involved in such a wonderful organization.
Excellent. Well, we'll be coming back to you soon to hear more about managing people in 13 regions. I don't envy you at all. So why don't I move to Natasha about you know, how did you end up on our superstar panel? Why don't you tell us a bit about your journey?
By accident, I think. It was a very circuitous route into payments, and now I'm sort of taking something of a career break, pause. I started in trading, sales and broking in the the early 90s. So about the time that Liar's Poker was written, if any of you have read that, and I reread it the other day. And I actually read Liar's Poker before I started, and I noticed that within the book, there is not one mention of she or her or women. The entire thing is written as though no woman has ever entered a trading floor. And that wasn't entirely incorrect, to be fair on Michael Lewis. We were pretty much one or two. That was a very different world. And there's a saying that if you're good at trading, you never get out of it. If you're bad, you leave. I think my career history would uphold the truth of that statement. So after about a decade losing money for various people, I moved into journalism. And I learned far more in journalism, I think, than I would ever have learned staying on a trading floor, because I was able to go sideways on a trading floor. Unless you're really, really good, you end up trading the same thing forever and ever. If you're really bad, you also end up trading the same thing for quite a long time. That was wonderful. And I was able to do that from home, which was really wonderful, because it was at the time I was trying to have a child. I had the child, and then I realized that it was really hard work and I needed to go back to work. And so I think when she was about 18 months old, I gave up journalism and I went into sort of public affairs and joined LCH ClearNet. And I realized that at work, you do much less work than when you're at home. So I don't know what you guys are feeling now that a lot of you watching here are working from home for the first time, but I found it really hard work with children around. And I'm finding it very hard work with my daughter around. After a couple of years at LCH ClearNet, I then moved into payments. And I suppose that's why I'm on this panel. And I joined Swift about 8 years ago, or 9 years ago now, and had a fantastic time there. What was interesting, particularly I think about my experience in that introduction, is that I'd worked in the financial industry by that stage for, I'm very old compared to all these people that have been talking about 10 years and 20 years, for about 25 years. And I had no idea how a payment was made. And what's more, when I joined Swift, a lot of my colleagues, including those at LCH ClearNet, said, you must tell me how it all works when you get there. I think by the time I left, I had a pretty good idea, but it took 8 years to get there. So I hope that answers.
I love your answer. First, it brought up memories for me, because I started my career as a journalist on the trading floor, writing about real-time market data 25 years ago. I also, my later career, work a lot with startups, and there are plenty of payment startups out there that have no idea how a payment works. So
some of them might not be doing it if they did.
It would be worth it for them to get that education. So I'm going to move on to Sara Webb to tell us a little bit about the journey that brought you here to us today.
Thank you, Liz. And it's great to hear Natasha and Sara's stories as well. Some definite similarities around the working from home environment at the moment with kids in the background. I have managed to secure my husband this afternoon to cover me, so just so I won't get any interruptions. But yeah, so how did I end up on this panel is a great question. I guess, as you heard from Preeti, I've been in payments for over 20 years. I actually fell in to my first job. I was meant to be going traveling. I was temping at American Express, and it just sort of evolved from there. I realized that I was being offered a great opportunity to extend myself and actually advance my career from the very early days. And so I worked up the organization at Amex, spent 13 years there, worked in a variety of roles, all of which stretched me. A great organization from a leadership perspective, so it taught me a huge amount. And really, gave me that insight into the card payment ecosystem. I then moved to Barclaycard, and with the view really to help drive the transformation of their corporate card business, and then move into the payment network space, which is really working with the payment networks, the likes of Visa and MasterCard and Amex. So that again sort of gave me that real insight into the ecosystem, into the guts of how the ecosystem works and why. And I think that context is really important, and how that context has really evolved over time, from being in a physical world to a sort of more virtual world of payments. So had a tremendous opportunities at both Amex and Barclaycard, but a great opportunity came along the way a year and a half ago to effectively run the business in the UK and Europe at OFX. OFX is a global money transfer business. It's headquartered in Australia. Well before the pandemic, I've been very familiar with Zoom. I spend a lot of time on Zoom anyway. This new world works for me quite well because we're all in an equal playing field at the moment. And all my colleagues are sort of sharing that pain of early and late Zoom calls. I really look back on my journey, and I feel very fortunate to have worked with at some incredible organisations and continue to be in that position of privilege. But most importantly, I've worked with some incredible leaders in all of these organisations, and continue to do so, and continue to learn a huge amount about the payment ecosystem. It's a real honour to be on this panel with some really great people here who've got real depth to their experience. So thank you for including me.
Great. I love your answer. It really touches on that kind of balance that we have with, it's kind of a privilege to be able to work from home, but there's also, it infringes on your personal life, and how do you balance that where, I have a sign on my door right now saying, "Do not enter on pain of death." So I feel you. I feel you on that. So let's round off our introductory question, introducing ourselves to everyone with the lovely Ruth Wandhöfer, please.
Thank you, Liz, and hello, everyone. Great to have you all virtually present. So how did my payment journey begin? Probably similar to Natasha's complete accident. I thought in the 90s when I studied that the real job to get was sort of a trader on the trading floor. So I studied financial economics and ended up in a very bizarre way in a real estate fund. That was my first job, managing liquidity and negotiating contracts. But quickly after that, I had this sort of random opportunity to go to Brussels, and I joined the European Commission in a traineeship. It was one of the hottest summers Belgium has ever seen. And as a consequence, I decided to stay and ended up, again, completely by accident, with a job as a policy advisor in the European Banking Federation, which of course is in charge to lobby on behalf of the European banks in relation to the European institutions. And again, at that time, the most important topic that the EU was working on, and arguably more than 17 years later is still working on, is payments. So it was the very early days of the new legal framework, which became the Payment Services Directive. And I ended up negotiating these laws on behalf of the European banking industry, which was incredibly exciting. At the same time, I worked with the European Payments Council, also just recently founded at the time, to create the single euro payments area. So I ended up writing rule books on technical standards for SEPA, believe it or not.
I read that book.
Yeah, yeah. And I read a book about it because it was such a hard time. I had to get it off my chest, that's for sure. But it was interesting because I was always sort of almost the little girl surrounded by old bankers and old industry people. And I have this network of people that are primarily now retired, which is quite funny from those days, because I just got into it accidentally. And very quickly, I realized how exciting it was because we were creating something completely new. We were trying to really make the euro worth its while and create equal payment opportunities and innovation. And of course, since those days, things have evolved with PSD2, but also incredibly critical, of course, on the fintech side, where we've seen since the early days of Startup Bootcamp, which lovely Liz got me into, that actually a lot of fintechs realized that payments was an exciting space. And arguably a lot of those didn't understand payments, but that's why people like us were there to help them. So it was one of those incredible journeys. After Brussels, I ended up in Citigroup again, because of the payments background I had built up. I ended up in transaction banking in the payment space. I built out my role there to cover the whole transaction banking business. And it was a combination around business strategy, regulatory influencing, industry work, and of course, working with Citi's clients in that space. So the payments journey kept continuing, more innovation has happened. And of course, now we are at a point where we're even thinking about new ways of money altogether. Never mind the e-money directive 2001. Now it's about central bank digital currencies, cryptography, etc. And that got me into researching that space. I did a PhD on how that technology is changing the nature of money and payments. And all of this is coming back into how infrastructures operate, how new solutions operate. And now that I'm retired from banking, which is a funny way of saying it, I'm doing a mix of different things, primarily working with fintechs and helping them both to grow from an investor perspective, but also to identify those opportunities that get us into that next level of digital financial services, not only payments, but also the capital markets, which I think is very exciting. And of course, it does really help if you know payments, because there's always a cash leg to a trade, as we know. And so payments, in a very strange way, started in 2003, and over 17 years, it's still the gift that keeps on giving for me.
Excellent. Well, retired bankers are some of my favorite people, Ruth. So absolutely no shame in that. I'm gonna, one of the purposes of the Superstar panel is really to, and I think a lot of women appreciate that, looking at our lives in a very holistic way. And to do that, I really like to go, I mean, we all here now talked about our careers and our lives as adults. But I think to get sort of a fuller vision of our journey, I really want to go way back to when we were all little girls and dreaming of a career in payments. Maybe before that, before, we even knew what banks or payments were. What did you dream of when you were small that you thought would happen in your life now? Did you dream of payments and banks and trading floors? Or, so I know you talked about your journey, but I really want to talk about you as people. What did you think your life was going to be like when you were 8 or 12 or 16? And Ruth, you're still there, and I'm going to start with you again.
So interestingly, what I wanted to be when I was little was actually an archaeologist, because I was quite intrigued by finding old treasures, as I can see now with my little daughter. It's exactly the same thing, and we have a whole treasure search going on in the garden every other week. But I guess it's sort of finding out about stuff. It's that general curiosity. And I frankly had no idea I would end up in payments. Just like many people, I thought payments is just something you do. And of course, payments have incredibly evolved since then, from paper-based to all sorts of different forms. So again, it was not part of my dream, but I think given the curiosity that underlines everything I do, it's sort of funny that I was actually able to make payments exciting. And I think I also helped make payments exciting for other people that thought it was really dull, by making them understand how big this piece is, how important it is for the global economy, how technical it can be, how almost detective work it can be in terms of influencing legislation around it and trying to get people on the right side. So there are all sorts of facets to it that you wouldn't see when you look at it from the tin lid perspective. So I'm glad I got into payments, because at least I could make something presumably dull quite exciting for a lot of people.
I find it interesting that you had wanted to become an archaeologist, which a lot of people think is a really exciting profession, but in reality is kind of sometimes very tedious and you know, repetitive. To go into payments that a lot of people think is kind of tedious to make it exciting. So we have both sides. All right, so I'm going to ask this question of Sara Webb now about what you dreamed of as a little girl.
So I wish I could say it was my dream to be 20 years in payments. It wasn't. I was really inspired when I was younger by Kate Adie, actually. And for some reason was just keen on becoming a journalist reporting from war zones. I have no idea now why that attracted me, but it was something. She just was very inspirational to me at that age, around the 8 sort of onwards age. But like I said earlier, I had a great opportunity that really landed at my feet, and I took it up, and it went on from there. And I think I've worked for great organisations, which have been really inspiring. I will say though, just to share with the broader sort of group here, I think, you know, I have had moments where I really reflected on, should I stay in payments? And it was about 6 years ago, after the birth of my second child, Freya, who's now 6, that I really came to a crossroads. I was working in a fairly senior, demanding role. My commute is very long into London. All that added up to effectively, you know, very limited time with my family. And, you know, I'd worked hard to have that family as well, to be honest. So I didn't want to sort of waste those precious younger years. So I kind of, at that point in those crossroads, did take that leap and have the conversation with the company that I was working for, which was Barclays at the time, and sort of drummed up enough courage and asked if I could return to work on a 3-day-a-week basis. And, you know, I really put some consideration into that request. I was prepared for the answer to be no. And I was prepared to sort of walk away and find a new path, possibly not in payments. But in my heart, I really wanted to stay in payments. I recognised the sort of, I guess, how much I put into my career at that point, into a particular topic, and I really didn't want to lose that passion that I had for payments and do something that I wasn't passionate for. I was really pleasantly surprised, if I'm honest. The answer was yes, and it worked brilliantly, I have to say. A lot of people say dynamic working doesn't always work, especially at the more senior levels, but it worked brilliantly for me, and it worked brilliantly for Barclays. And I did that for a couple of years, and then was very happy actually to come back to work on a full-time basis. I really enjoy working, but equally I enjoy spending time at the right points in time with my family and investing time in their future as well. And, you know, I've had it reaffirmed, I think, through this experience that I really enjoy working on my own in the house. So, but certainly I'm very grateful for that opportunity, and I think it's just brilliant. It was brilliant to be in a position where I could actually show others that if you don't ask, you don't get, and that it can work, and it can work really well. So I've made a point. I was very active in making a point when I was working part-time of being very clear to people that that's what I did, and it's perfectly okay, and it should be celebrated.
Yeah, I completely understand the Kate Adie childhood. Yes, I wanted to be Diane Sawyer, but long gone. So I mean, I'm going to turn to Natasha now. I mean, you've had so many different elements and touch points in your career. I mean, what did you dream about when you were a little girl? Oh, Natasha, you're on mute. Which is the phrase, I'm sorry, I'm on mute. I think it's going to be the phrase of 2020, by the way. So well done. Natasha, go ahead.
Well, whatever I dreamt about, it wasn't about payments. That's for sure. But I'm going to pick up on two things. One, the comment, Sarah's comment about Kate Adie. So I mean, later on, when I turned to journalism, I took a year out and did a postgraduate course in journalism. And there was me and a bunch of people that were 20 years younger and 10 years younger than me on this course. And they all wanted to be the next Kate Adie. And I thought, well, actually, yeah, you know, why not? And then September the 11th happened. And my parents were staying with me in London. And because I was interviewing some banker, and he said, come up to Canary Wharf. And I said, oh, I don't know if I can get out to Canary Wharf. And my mother said, well, there you go. You can't be Canadian if you won't even go to Canary Wharf. So I stayed with writing about banking. And then when I was writing about banking, or trading and derivatives and risk management and so forth, what I found the most interesting was clearing. And that was how I ended up at LCH ClearNet. And if payments is boring, clearing is really boring. Or if payments is interesting, clearing is really interesting. And the leap to Swift happened when I was approached by Swift. And Gottfried, who was then became chief executive, said, if you can find clearing interesting, you can find payments interesting. Nothing can be as boring as clearing. And payments are endlessly interesting. And as Ruth mentioned, you know, they're hugely important, they're rarely thought about, but it's a whole world of contradictions. It's global, it's local, it's big, it's small, it's individual, it's social, it's just so many things. It's technology and convention. It's wonderful. So I hope I'll be here for a while.
Excellent. Cool. Yeah, I agree. I remember I was in London as well on September 11th. It was a very strange day being over here. So we're gonna round off our little girl question with Sara from JP Morgan.
Okay. So growing up in right outside of New York City, being very American, my family said I could be whatever I wanted. So as a little girl, I wanted to be the first female president of the United States. And I just absolutely was like driven to be that person. And my grandmother was right behind me. My grandmother grew up in a time where women didn't have the ability really to work. So she was a huge supporter of making sure that I went into college, got an internship, and I started interning in New York City at Citibank as soon as I could possibly be allowed to work. And what I did is, my first job was actually in wealth management. One of the first things I did was actually look and track money and learn how to read Swift messages in a mainframe, which opens up and it's black and it doesn't have a mouse because it's all keys. So shows a little bit my age, but I really like the engineering aspect of it. So I like actually talking to someone, understanding their problems, and then mapping out, like I always do, how does money move? And I always try to draw things and get things in my head. And after doing private banking, I went and I spent a bit of time in retail banking. And then I found my home in transaction banking. And the reason I like it so much and why it's for me forever is because of the outward vision of what it is. So we actually move money around the world in different countries. Natasha, to your point, global, local, what you do on a day-to-day basis isn't an internal company procedure. It's actually understanding what regulations are coming, what technology is coming, and everything you do has then a knock-on impact of the outside world. So everything that happened with COVID, you have to make sure that you're still up and running because payments move every day, regardless if people are in the office or not. And it's so important in this business. And what I like about it now is that for like, when I first started, everyone's like, oh, transaction banking isn't really like the cool place. The traders, the M&A is really where people like to go. But now payments are super cool.
These people are idiots.
Yeah, but now everyone wants to be in payments. Like all the VC funding is going to startup digital banks. The whole fintech revolution is just so impressive that everyone's like, oh wait, you do payments? Oh, I want to know more about it. And that's why I feel like we're just at the cusp of something really exciting that's going to happen in the space where we're all really experts in.
Excellent. So I just wanted, before moving on to my next question, and I'm going to keep on that theme that you mentioned, Sara, in a sec. If there's anyone watching that wants to pose a question for our panel, you know, sort of queue it up in the chat, and we'll see if we can get to it as part of the time. So don't be shy, everybody. So I just want to know, is Ruth still with us, or I can keep on with Sara?
Yes, I'm here.
Nope. Yeah,
yeah.
She's back.
Yeah. I was just muted and invisible.
So I wanted to. I'm gonna talk to both you and Sara, but I'll start with you first. You know, Sara mentioned a little bit about you know, payments being sort of that revolution in fintech innovation, and you know, and we have talked about with a lot of your journeys about why payments are important. You know, why do you think they were the core of what kind of kickstarted what we now consider fintech over a decade ago. Why is payments important?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of factors and timing. I mean, one thing that maybe many people don't see so much in the front line is actually regulation in a funny way, because in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, it was PSD1, which tried to open up the market for non-banks. So the whole idea was to say, actually, other providers can enter that value chain, can provide services, can even move money. Certainly they can't take deposits, but everything else should actually be allowed. And at the same time, we saw that technology was accelerating in terms of innovation, in terms of computer capacity, volume processing. Obviously, we had the arrival of cloud at the end of 2010, etc. So all of these factors came together. There was an open door in terms of you can do more out of this industry. It's quite a concentrated market, combined with technology gives you more opportunity to pick stuff up from the shelf. We also, of course, had the 2008 financial crisis, which was the first wave of bankers getting into other areas, bankers being either fired or, you know, complete banks going downhill. And these people, of course, needed a purpose and said, actually, with all the knowledge I have, I may look at what technology can do. I may look at the opportunities in the market and think about creating something. And I would say that by sort of 2014, 15 onwards, we really saw this coming out as big propositions, not only some crazy ideas, but people actually launching businesses and working on this. We also saw then the arrival of new business models altogether, for example, crowdfunding. So there were a number of things that just didn't exist before, and technology enabled them to be efficiently and quickly executed. So it was really about the right knowledge base, the right idea, and understanding of the regulatory parameters that together led to this industry becoming the boom. And I always say that payments eventually is the reason why banking is being redefined. We see other industries such as asset management are being next in terms of that, I guess, healthy disruption. You know, businesses are not run efficiently. It's not transparent. We have to remove information asymmetries also for the clients. There are lots of other parts of financial services that still need to go through these phases, but payments has, you know, achieved a lot and continues to go through these phases. And it's interesting that now we actually see almost the opposite, that some of the innovative payment businesses that have been able to deliver good consumer services, for example, now have more regulatory challenges because they kind of didn't take the regulation serious enough. So it is very important to keep all of those variables on the table and be quite attentive to all of those at the same time in order to be long-term sustainable.
Right. Yeah, so I'm going to go back to Sara now, you know, because you mentioned a bit about people becoming more interested in payments and more interested in the transaction banking space. And I mean, why do you think this area is so important as the core for a lot of fintech innovation we've seen over the past decade?
Yeah, I think everything has a payment at the bottom of it. And I think that user experience is so important. And as a society, we want things quicker. So I look at even just car companies or rideshare companies, you're bringing a user to paying a driver. And if you can make that quick, you can get adoption, and you make that easy, you get a lot of users in it. And I think that all of that is underpinned by payment rails, whether it's food delivery that we're all living on today, whether it's, you know, streaming TV, etc. It's all underpinned by payments. And I think that we're now getting to a society where I can have anything on demand, and that then in turn made our retail banking experience feel like, oh wait, I need to be able to do this on my mobile. I need to be doing it in a way better experience. And we've seen a lot of movement, to Ruth's point, on regulation and in the industry. Like, we've been tracking packages for years on FedEx or DHL or UPS, etc. But tracking payments was something that we couldn't do. You could send $1 billion to China and you don't know if it's there unless the recipient has told you, which is very kind of archaic. And with the rise of Swift GPI, we're starting to get that transparency in the payment chain. But I look at absolutely all these new business models is just fueling the demand for faster, cheaper, and then more secure transactions. So the fraudsters that are coming out of the today are looking for going up against electronic transactions. And you saw that starting in the retail, consumer cards, and now moving into more corporate treasurers. So a lot of the companies that can give a better secure experience, and we've seen some of the legislation around the SCA and PSD2 really helping individuals feel like they've got secure logons to their bank accounts. So it is really that forefront of people's mind is trying to get things quicker, but also really recognizing that they want it to be secure. And that's why all the companies are really focused on that user experience and bringing that value that the new technologies out there can derive for a business.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm gonna go for my next question. We've got 2 more questions to go. If we don't have any questions from the audience, I'm just looking to see whether or not I'm missing anything as the moderator. So I'm going to do another one of my sort of left field questions, and I do apologize for this, and apologies to Marie Kondo as well. I like to ask people what brings them joy, you know, in their life, to find out more about them as a people, and have it come up first. So you know what, and I don't have in my notes, I haven't put an order down for you guys, so if it's a surprise, I apologize. So I'm going to talk to Natasha for the first question, to see if you can give us some insight about what brings you joy.
Well, a lot of things I'm not prepared to discuss in public, at least on a recorded line. But I'll tell you what did give me a lot of joy. When it was announced that I was leaving Swift, several people close to me knew that I was going to be leaving. But what gave me particular joy was that 90% of the people that contacted me to say they were sorry or they'd enjoy working with me or otherwise were women. And of those, most of them were younger women. And I had no idea that was the case. So to anyone that's younger listening to this, and you're probably all younger than me, I hope for your sakes you are, reach out. You know, even if we're older, we can be shy. And people are busy, and I wish I'd had more time to network, I think, with younger people and to be available to them. But they obviously, you know, felt that there was something useful in my presence, which was very nice of them to say so. But it was the thing that gave me the greatest joy, I think, in the entire time that I was there. I had a lovely time there, but it was a really rewarding thing to find out. So I hope that's a useful answer.
I think that's a characteristic of anyone who wanted to be a journalist or was a journalist. They just like meeting people, networking.
That's true.
I agree. Cool. I'm gonna go to Sara Webb now to see if she can fill us in a little bit of what brings you joy in general.
Yes, happy. Great question. So I think just at a personal level, and it's something I'm missing at the moment, but that's traveling. With my family, and I have 2 girls, they're 6 and 12, and they're very much at that age where, you know, you can take them on trips, and we did a really exciting trip last year to Sri Lanka, and it was just fantastic to see them absorb and grow and learn about different cultures and experience that direct. I think you can really, and I enjoyed it as well. So very much, it was, you know, it'd been a long time, you know, having had 2 children, you know, since we've been able to do that kind of holiday. So it really reawakened that sort of lust to sort of go and, you know, experience other cultures and go off the beaten path a little bit. And I certainly, just going back to Natasha's comments, what she explained from a work and professional sense in terms of what gives me joy, Natasha's comments resonate very strongly with me. I always feel that, you know, I could probably work in any industry, if I'm being really honest. I love payments and I'm passionate about payments, but what really gets me up out of bed and invigorated is being able to work with like-minded people, strong leaders, and also I think most importantly is to feel that I'm making an impact on individuals and leaving an imprint of some kind on that individual. So it's immensely rewarding when someone comes up and says something about something that a small thing that you might have done, even if it's just making a cup of tea. That effectively is what brings me joy, and it sounds soppy, but it is genuine, and it's how I would always like to, you know, sort of look back on my career. And I think someone said something really important to me is, you know, when you're a grandmother, what will you tell your grandchildren that you did? I'm unlikely to be going into the nth level of detail around foreign exchange and money transfers and PSD2. I'm more likely to talk about people and what I did with people that I worked with.
Excellent. So we've got about 10 minutes left for our chat. So I'm going to go to our final question, which is a really important question for this superstar panel, and this is advice. So I'm really going to talk. So I'm going to go in the order that I warned you all. So I'll start with Natasha. You know, what are some pearls of wisdom that you can offer the young women and men coming into this industry now? This is your chance to offer your advice, Natasha.
Well, first of all, enjoy it and stay in it, because it is a great industry, as we've all said. And it's very plural. There's all sorts of parts to it. You can be technical, you can be mathematical, you can be neither of the above, in my case. And the industry wants and needs you. I think as a woman, and as an older woman from a Hispanic background, and you know that there are lots of different kinds of those, I would encourage everyone to be bold, to believe in yourself, don't apologize for yourself, and ask for it, because if you don't ask, you won't get.
That's a theme that's coming up a lot in this panel as well. That's really good. So I'm going to go to Sara. Sara C. No, Sara Webb. That's it. The other Sara. Yes.
Great.
You're back. Very good. What advice could you give?
I think I've touched on some of it already. I think I would go to focusing on the fundamentals. There's a lot happening in payments, and there's a lot of things that touch payments, and it's quite easy to, and it's not a waste of time, but remember the fundamentals of payments. I think Sara summed it up earlier, there's always a payment at the end. So it's actually, you know, thinking about the ecosystem that supports that and underpins it, and thinking about the need that's being addressed. I think that's a really key thing to get to the core of the payment flows. I'm with Sara about that. I like to map it out and understand it A to B, or A to Z, I should say. So really to get that context. And then the second thing is not to be shy to build your network. I'm already sitting here thinking to myself, I really must get in touch with these fellow panelists. I think I could spend a very enjoyable coffee actually really digging into some of the things that Sara and Natasha and Ruth have experienced over time, both from a leadership perspective, but also from a payments perspective. So I would encourage everyone to look at it with huge amounts of curiosity and progress in that way.
Excellent. So, okay, so Ruth and Sara, I do apologize. We have 2 more minutes. This was my error, my inability to moderate correctly with the time. So each of you have 1 minute left. So I'm going to go to Ruth. What advice would you give to young people coming into the industry now?
Yeah, be curious. I agree with everyone's comments on asking. I think asking those that have been in the industry for a long time, because they have a lot of wisdom and they've seen things change over time. And don't forget, payments is a network industry, which of course means also at a human level, don't forget the networking. It's the most important thing to do, because it's a global business at the end of the day.
Excellent, thank you. And now Sara, please wrap us up with your pearls.
Absolutely. Building on some of the similar themes, I think that we are a community of payments and we know each other from all different areas in our lives. So I think throughout your career, you just need to treat everybody with respect, because absolutely your paths will continue to interact, and hopefully you get to continue in this community that is so great and so powerful. It's so important that you treat everybody in the right way.
Excellent. Ladies, thank you so much. Natasha, Sara C, Sara W, and Ruth, thank you very much for joining us.
Wonderful, thank you. Everybody,
Thank you.
Really fascinating. And I always think the sign of a good panel is when you do get to that point where you just think, we could talk for so much longer. Liz, thank you so much for moderating that. It's a fantastic discussion, going from, you know, not only, actually what I love about it in the middle, it has some great insights in terms of the role of payments in innovation, and then some of the dynamics that have to come together for that, but also hearing insights from people's career journeys and personalities. So thank you so much for that. That was amazing. A big thing that came out for me was the fact that we're thinking about championing others. And of course, now we go into the, Christy, I see your camera is on, and it's off again. So I would suggest that we just go straight to the awards section. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, we gave 2 awards, and we have 2 more today. And for this, we give our thanks to our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Jewerdon. I'm Country Manager of American Express UK. And I had the pleasure of chairing the awards committee this year. The committee was a fabulous group of senior women from across the industry. And on behalf of the committee, I'm really pleased to be able to present the 2020 Women in Payments UK Awards. So for the Emerging Leader Award, we were looking for someone who demonstrates leadership, professional excellence, and makes a difference, and someone that has up to 14 years experience within the payments industry. Our nominees were Jennifer Duncan from MasterCard and Laura Wheatley from Elevon. Our winner was described as curious, unafraid to challenge up front, brings people along. She has an impact within her business, driving innovation within government digital payments. And to be frank, her list of achievements were very long, so I am only going to call out a few. She's recognised as a financial inclusion expert and was instrumental in setting up the successful UK Government Financial Inclusion Commission. She chairs the Project Inclusion on behalf of Emerging Payments Association and was recently recruited as a non-executive director for Fair for You, an ethical alternative lender, for her expertise in this area. One referee said she was unselfish in sharing her expertise and time. And another was very clear about how she is influencing the next generation of financial services providers to design their service to be more inclusive. Our winner is Jennifer Duncan, Vice President of Government Innovation, MasterCard. Congratulations.
Hi, welcome. I'm sure like me, many of you were hoping to be together with friends and colleagues at the Women in Payments conference today, meeting and greeting and catching up with each other. The bad news is, unfortunately, you're here in my kitchen, so welcome. Thank you. And the second bit of bad news is, I'm afraid you're going to have to cater for your own refreshments. So pour yourself a glass of wine, get the kettle on, make a cup of tea. Because in typical tradition, I've been waiting a long time to make my own version of an Oscar speech. So I'll have to thank my agent, my parents, the dog, my partner, the milkman. You would need a whole bottle of wine for that, I think. So more seriously, I would like to say a massive thank you. This is a huge honour to be getting this award today, especially in a fantastic field of female talent that really should be celebrated. So congratulations to each and every one of you. Also, a quick thank you to all of those who've worked in the industry and beyond the industry to drive the agenda of financial inclusion. We've done a huge amount of work, but a lot of that has been down to the Financial Inclusion Commissioners, who was an absolute pleasure to work with, and I've learned a lot from them professionally. Also to the team at the EPA and Project Inclusion. It's inspiring to see the industry come together to really help those who are often the most vulnerable in society. And also a personal thank you to Angela Clements at Fair for You, who has given me an opportunity to work with an organisation with an amazing social purpose, but also enable me to grow from a career perspective and step up and take on my first non-exec position, something I would encourage everybody to consider. So thank you to all of those organisations and individuals. Now, I was asked to say a couple of words just in terms of my career and potential advice. And I guess there's 3 things really that I would say. So the first one is, don't be afraid to meddle. I think my old CEO I used to work for used to say, be curious, ask questions, probe, challenge things, because it's the best way for us all to grow and learn. And it's certainly how I have developed in my career and knowledge. The second thing is do something that you're passionate about. It's very difficult to lead if you don't believe in what you're doing yourself. Do something and be involved in an area that makes you feel energized and emboldened. A colleague questioned my decision a few years ago to move into the payments industry. They thought that I'd be working on a single regulation for the rest of my life. How very wrong he is. I think this is a fantastic and dynamic industry to work in, and it's amazing to see so many women involved in it. And I guess lastly, work for people and with people who champion you, who push you to leave your comfort zone, and do the same for others. Help them identify their strengths and grow. That's what makes a real difference. So with that, I'll just say a quick thank you again. I hope you're all thoroughly enjoying the conference and getting a lot out of all the digital content. I hope to see you all soon and to be able to get together with the women of the industry very soon. Thanks.
Now to the award for Advocate for Women. The judges were looking for someone who actively contributes to the advancement and development of women either inside or outside his or her organisation, someone who leads by example and uses their position to actively influence C-suite level. Our nominees are Jackie Barwell from ACI Worldwide, Natalie Foster from Curve, Seema Kinden-Johnson from Nuggets, and Katrina Roberts from American Express. Our winner is someone who's making a difference inside and outside the organisation. On top of being a unit CIO, they are executive champion for inclusion and diversity for a global tech organisation. One of the referees said her passion, outspoken voice and influence have made significant and visible progress in gender balance globally within technologies. She's created long-term strategy to diversify talent, introduced gender-inclusive recruitment, which is aimed at removing unconscious bias, and created an advocacy and development program for high-potential women. She's also actively involved in trying to steer young women to STEM careers with involvement with Girls Who Code, General Assembly, Black Girls Who Code, and others. I'd like to congratulate Katrina Roberts, Senior Vice President of Technologies, American Express.
Thank you so much for this award. I'm really honoured because I really believe it's my job to promote female leadership and help people in their careers. It's just the right thing to do. Everyone should be able to reach their full potential, and we know diverse workforces create better workplaces, more ideas, and the ability to build the right products for everybody. So important in the payments industry, where so much discretionary spend is managed by women. I also want to take a moment to thank all the amazing people who've helped me through my career. My fantastic husband and son, the amazing people I work with at American Express, and my boss, who's always had my back and let me be me. And the final thing I'd say is this is a really challenging time for everybody, working in ways we never thought we'd have to. Please make sure you reach out to each other and still think about career progression. Ask for advice, give advice, because now more than ever, we really need to have each other's backs. Thank you so much.
I know that Christy is having a couple of technology challenges coming through, so I would just like to say on her behalf, if I may, that she wants to offer enormous congratulations to both the winners, so Jennifer Duncan, the emerging leader, and also Katrina Roberts, who's the advocate for women as well. She very, like, I spend a lot of time with the Women in Payments team, and they're massively inspired by everybody who not only puts themselves forwards for awards, and we do want you to tell everybody that you've actually won awards, because it confirms you as champions and indeed role models for everybody in the industry. So please keep doing what you're doing. We love what you're doing, and please do champion for others, because remember, it's important to pay it forward as well. Our thanks to Liz and the extraordinary executive panel. Thank you all for taking your time, not only, as I said before, just to share insights about what's important today, but fascinating sharings and learnings about, you know, your inspiration into the industry, your journey into the industry, and of course some of the things that give you joy day by day, both in these extraordinary times, but actually as you function as senior leaders in the industry. Liz, thank you as always, an amazing facilitator, really grateful. And Natasha, Sara, Ruth and Sara, thank you again for stepping up and inspiring everybody else as well. My name is Julia Streets. It's always such a pleasure to be invited to host the Women in Payments series. I say I have a great joy. I get invited to travel the world. We've even done live recordings of diversity podcasts from Women in Payments stages around the world. To have pivoted so quickly, I commend the team, echo Christy's comments earlier about echoing the team in creating this digital format. So if you missed yesterday, don't forget to go onto the POM and then onto the platform so you can get the content there, and of course tune in tomorrow. But before we go, I would also like to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors. The global sponsors for 2020, JP Morgan, who are our silver sponsors, and bronze level, we thank ACI Worldwide, Ingenico, PayPal and Visa. In the UK here, again, our thanks to American Express for all their support for the awards, which really, really matters. For Nastra, for their gold support. The Unicorn Challenge tomorrow, sponsored by Elevon, and Ripple for your bronze contribution as well. It's really appreciated. These things would not be possible without your support, and we are most grateful. So ladies and again, gentlemen, because you are always welcome at Women in Payments, I'm going to sign off now again, say I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and do tune in again 2 o'clock British summertime to see our Unicorn Challenge. I've been Julia Streets. Thank you for watching.